Yeah, I think we're live here. Just a second. Make sure everything up is up and running. Dope. It's good there. And looking good here. Cool. Welcome, guys. Zach, good to see you, man. Welcome back. I screwed up my schedule and I meant to schedule my premiere for today and scheduled it for Friday. And instead of changing it, I decided just to come on, leave it scheduled for tomorrow and do a quick live stream this afternoon as well. So let's go ahead and get ourselves started. Zach, welcome. This first bag's going to be for you. Zach says that he hasn't been on in a few days, but he's getting ready to move. Still in Indiana, though. So you're staying within the state of Indiana, but moving within the state. Well, hopefully to better opportunities, Zach, and more gainful employment or whatever it is that you're looking for wherever you're moving. Hope you find it. All right, first bag of the day. Going out to our man Zach. Welcome, Timothy. Timothy Johnston asks, have you had the chance to try any of the Bombada brand by Jokes Up? I haven't yet, Timothy. I don't think I've seen it yet. Where are you located? Are you in the greater Los Angeles area? Just want to make sure the product is around me and I will keep an eye out for it in the future. But I don't think I've even heard of it, to be honest. Timothy? I'm guessing they're a vape brand. But anyways, appreciate the suggestion. Zach mentioning something, a brand that he's missing, which is Steezy. And I can get that, man, especially not having it easy and reliable and quick to get. It must suck in an illegal state. It's easy to take it for granted here in California, for sure. Timothy also recommends ice cream carts from that same brand, Jokes Up. Thank you for the suggestion, Timothy. Again, I'll be on the lookout in the future. And well, Timothy, you're here right in time. We got through our first bag in record time. Let's go ahead and get our second, and this one's going to be for you, my friend. Zach commiserates and says that yes, it is so easily taken for granted. Yeah, I don't even want to have to contemplate living in not California or West Coast, I guess, more generally. I wish, though, for all of our sakes, Zach, we didn't have to take it for granted because, as we've talked about many times, wish that you couldn't be imprisoned for something that I am not only not penalized for, but in some ways culturally encouraged to do. What a weird country we live in. Zach further comments, he says, I still think California has the most potent weed, in his opinion. I can take 2 hits off of Steezy and be baked and take 3 bowls here and not feel a thing. Not so surprising. California is the world's weed headquarters. Everything that we enjoy from weed since in the past like 40 years, any new innovation, any new strains can pretty much all be fingered to California somewhere. Even in the darkest days of the drug wars, the war on drugs, there were still places in California fearlessly innovating and, charging headfirst, saying, fuck you, federal government. Good for them. I'm glad they did. And it's no surprise that California is still the world's leader and still everybody is trying to play catch up. But I think, they'll get there eventually. Seeds are seeds. I guess soil isn't soil, though. But most weed is grown indoors. Relax, but chill. Timothy says, I'm actually in Kentucky, but his buddy owns 4 flavors, and Bombada is new. It's a lot in the Midwest, but the ice cream dispensary is in Los Angeles. He highly recommends it, any of the 4 flavors. Well, that is cool, man. Cool to see your buddies involved in the business. Thanks for hanging out with us from good old Kentucky. Shit, what is Kentucky? I forgot what their motto is. Something kind of surprising. Kentucky, man. Shared a border with you for many, many, many years of my life. Boy, Kentucky. That's a state I forget about all the time. But has a lot of political power. Thanks, Mitch. Zach saying shout out to Jack Herrera. If I had to pick a sativa strain to be a favorite, no, it might be Jack Herrera. Classic. Tastes great. Hits just right. Not a strain guy, but if I see Jack Herrera in a big list of sativa options, I'll probably choose that. Welcome back, OJ Simp. So glad to have you. Twizzy Rich. Welcome, Twizzy Rich. I'm not sure if we've had the chance to hang out before. Thanks for hanging out with us, though. Twizzy says, and I hope I'm saying that right, I live in California and I still barely feel high 20 minutes after taking a hit from dispensary pods. Twizzy, is it specifically the mode of cannabis that vaporizers don't do it for you? Or at this point, no cannabis, your tolerance is so high, it's not really doing it for you? Or are you referring to specifically vaporizers? I'm curious which, and what you do for your primary mode of THC. Shh. Welcome, Danny. Danny, thanks for hanging out with us. Good to see you again, man. I screwed up. I don't know if you were. Somebody was definitely waiting on that live premiere. I meant to premiere it tomorrow and accidentally premiered it, or I meant to premiere it today and premiered it tomorrow instead. My bad. I will not be live streaming tomorrow though. After that one, bad expectation to set. Anyways, again, welcome, Danny. Happy to have you back here. Twizzy says that weed still gets them high, but he's had to move to vapes because my parents had to hate the smell. Ah, well, vapes are definitely a way of reducing odors for sure. You can get away with a lot. But you find that flour gets you way higher. Twizzy, is that correct? I know others that's the only mechanism. That's the only use, the only way that they ever do weed, and swear it's the one that gets them the highest is actual flour. I need to wake up here, stumbling over my words. And I'm not even that high yet. Twizzy still has to go outside to smoke his weed to not irk his parents. While I find the smell of weed quite pleasant, I'm not actually sure if I really like the smell of it or its associations are just so strong that that all of the associated feelings that come with that smell overwhelm the actual sensory thing where, maybe I actually don't like the smell of weed, but everything else that comes with it makes it so that you do actually kind of like the smell, or at least you have a positive association with it. So I'm not sure which of those is true, but I think I do like it. But I don't begrudge anybody who detests it. People are very particular about odors. Many people are super sensitive to all kinds of smells, and there is no doubt that weed is quite pungent. And its odor is not only very, again, it produces quite a lot of odorant, whatever that word is, for not a lot of material, and it's not like any other smell anybody else can smell. So I don't begrudge people who do hate it or have it as a pet peeve. Okay, let's get bag number 3 going for our new folks and Danny here. Welcome back, OJ. This bag is going to be for you. Twizzy, we're going to do bag number 3 for you. And of course, Danny, let's get this one started. Still working through the space trails. King Yeti, welcome back, man. We'll catch you on the next, whatever we call it, dedication in just a moment. Glad to see you back. Denny says that edibles are his favorite method, actually. And Denny, I think this is pretty well known. I'm right there with you. Mine too. Sort of a set it and forget it kind of thing. You don't have to keep going back to the volcano. Twizzy says, I need to do more edibles, but they are just so expensive to consistently be lit off of them. Well, Twizzy, that is true mostly, especially if you just pick them right off the shelf. If you know what to look for, well, you are absolutely right. Weed is always, edibles are always going to command some kind of premium because there's just extra steps. There's extra labor involved in getting the THC from flower into the product. There's actually a lot of extra labor, and there's THC loss. So it's always going to be slightly more expensive. But if you know where to look, and if you stretch your definition of edibles, you can find some great deals, especially if you look for things like tincture, which you can find in bigger quantities than you can in edibles. Those are allowed to be up to 1,000 milligrams, and you can usually get those quite cheap on a per milligram basis. Uh, OJ says, here's the question. Here's a question for the day. Does the concept of art, like music, writing, film, graphic design, etc., still have value in 2022? Or is art so oversaturated and easy to get that it's lost its inherent value? Easy to get and easy to learn slash make. Well, OJ, what a interesting question, and not a premise I've ever heard before articulated, that the ease of making art makes all art irrelevant. I don't know. I don't think that I I like the topic. I think it's interesting, but I don't think that that's true at all. Actually, um, that the proliferation of things does not make the whole class of whatever it is lesser. In some ways, it just makes those things better. It helps the more people who are in those fields making that kind of art, whether it's making movies, making video games, drawing web comics, whatever it is, all of those people build and work off of each other and generally make things better. Like, I'm not a I generally think that most things in terms of art gets better, more precise. Now I don't know, I think you could write polemics until the end of time about how all of the quality of art is, movies today aren't as good as they were in the 70s, and literature today isn't the same that it was in the turn of the 20th century. But I think that those are very flaccid arguments, always turn out to be not correct. I do just generally think that the more people who are producing art means that the more ideas, the more inspiration, the more it is a situation of like the rising tide raises all ships, whatever that expression is, where more people producing art just makes people better, or if not better, at the bare minimum, increases the no, I'm gonna stick with better, because I'm high and can't think of exactly what I want to say. Uh, no, but I want to go back to the second part of your question. No, sorry, my dogs are really upset, as always. Which is the idea that art is so oversaturated that it would lose its inherent value. Can there be so much of anything that it loses its value? Well, yes, monetarily. That's actually obviously true for, supply and demand is very much a thing of things being oversaturated. But art, so can you draw so many drawings? Can you sculpt so many sculptures? Can you make so many movies that it makes the whole thing irrelevant? I don't think so. But there is like there's kind of a fascinating question of like, well, how many things can actually be made? And what does it mean when in something that isn't created by humans? Like, now there's of course AIs that compose music, there are AIs that edit videos, there are AIs that write stories. Is that art? And then does that have just as much weight to it as anything produced by a human? I don't know. And if you want to get really, 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 really in the weeds here, you could even articulate the fact that something like the Library of Babel, which is this project on the internet. It's one of the most fascinating things in the world, where basically every piece of text ever could be conceived, literally every combination, I forget how many characters, maybe 3,600. Every possible combination of 3,600 characters already exists technically in something called the Library of Babel, meaning that anything that's ever been written or could ever be written in that many characters actually already has been composed technically, sort of. It's a fun computer science problem. So, yeah, I don't know what point I'm trying to make other than to say, like, there is some existential horror in the question of, like, well, how much art can we produce, and what if it is already technically all produced? And I don't know. I'm quite high. Love the question. So love the question. We're gonna have to give you the first dab, OJ Simp. At least for the you really brought one. King Yeti says, King Yeti grappling the OJ's great question says, art has always been oversaturated. That's why curators became a thing. Value is always based on subjectivity. Excellent, excellent points by King Yeti. That value in art is always, always, always subjective. And what is valuable is also a thing that is slippery. What could be valuable and desirable can change wildly and greatly from year to year. Yeah, art, it's a fickle market. Sherry Morgan. Welcome, Sherry. Sherry says, so happy to catch you live. Miss you so much. Your reviews help so much. Well, thank you, Sherry. That's very kind of you to say. Really appreciate that, and happy for you to have a chance to watch us live. I have to do a first dab, unfortunately, for OJ, though I'm already quite high. Dr. SJ, welcome, Dr. SJ. We'll make sure to get you on the next bag. Says, hey, Wheats, my wife was feeling really frisky earlier. Ooh la la. She asked me not to tie her up and said to do what I want. No limits. It's the dream. An offer no man could refuse. Tell me about it. So here I am, finally watching Wheats in peace. Is your wife still tied up, Dr. SJ, while you're not having relations with her and watching me? Did you leave her tied up? Because that actually, one, I appreciate the joke as always. Amazing. You had me. You always do. Shit, I forgot what point I was going to make. Oh, yes. And Dr. SJ, yes. What I'm trying to say is you might actually be doing her a favor if, like, that is actual kink that she has, which I guess it might be. Let's go get this bag. I keep promising to do it. Let's do it. My bad. Yes, Twizzy, I think if you're just now meeting Dr. SJ, Dr. Smegma Jones he's a favorite. He's the stream's favorite. He has a wife, a newborn, 3 dogs, that enjoy various levels of. I can't even remember what I was going to say. There's some Taco Bell joke. I'm pretty sure his dog's got diarrhea. Shit, I'm high. Here we go. Oh, and for anybody wondering, this is still the Rainbow Tongue I was dabbing on the other day. Taste the rainbow. Carpe, welcome Carpe. Says my boy Wheats is back. I got some 30% THC blue cookies today. Ooh, that sounds great. Thanks for sharing them with us or being here with us while you are enjoying it. OJ says, one, you're welcome for the answer, and that he agrees to some extent that inspiration is definitely more accessible than ever. Like now I can throw on any song. That comes to mind, mood, when to work out to. But back in the day, we'd have to hear it on the radio, get the CD, change the CD, all of the various annoying tech things that we had to do before streaming music. As we slowly shaved off the barriers to having to get music played to you, the music you wanted to get played to you over the past century. It's really quite amazing. So, and OJ, that sort of brings up a great point about the abundance of things and the incredible amounts of choice, which is the what may doom us is the not. Well, I'm going to go back to your original premise, which is oversaturation and abundance. Will there eventually be so much incredible, amazing, great stuff to experience? This is a very Huxleyan, Brave New World kind of argument, which is, and this is the big worry about, I think, that your question, OJ, is not that art will wither and die, but, well, yes, eventually, but because that there is just such an incredible glut of amazing, incredible things to see and watch and experience. How many days could you watch Marvel movies for now? Like literal days, like not even including like TV shows. How many video games? I mean, you couldn't, there are not enough hours in the year to experience all of the incredible video games that come out. There's just so much incredible stuff, all begging for your attention constantly. And they just keep adding to it. The mountain of stuff that you want to do, that you want to see, that you want to try, that just begs to be watched, that begs to be played, that begs to be listened to, that at some point nobody's going to want to produce anything new, that nobody is ever going to feel the need to add to this mass of stuff because, well, there's no chance to get bored. Sure, you might get inspired, but the next episode's right around the corner, or your dailies are coming up in World of Warcraft, or Spotify has already figured out what songs are going to keep you listening, keep you from hitting that stop button and pulling your AirPods out. Is that the worry? Like, I don't think it's the worry is that, like, we're just going to produce ourselves into irrelevance. It's that we're going to make so much incredible, awesome stuff that nobody's going to feel the need to want to make anything ever again, because why would you? When somebody's already done better. Anyways, thank you again, OJ. The question keeps on giving. Sherry says, where's your super chat? I'm not sure, actually. I'm not sure what super chat is, to be honest, Sherry. But I appreciate the question. And if anybody knows, please help us out. Carpe says, I also took 100 milligrams of THC syrup to the dome and felt like 30 to 40 milligrams of something like a cookie. And then he says the hypothesis was correct. Yeah, I'm not sure why that ends up being the case. Thankfully, you can buy usually high THC tinctures for a decent price, and thus you can kind of balance it out that way. But it would be interesting for some, enterprising, renegade young either who studies weed. It's not food scientists. Well, I guess maybe some food scientists should start looking into things like metabolizing weed through sublingual tincture and why it seems to not be as effective. That could be a fun study. I mean, I don't know how hard it is to get those if you get laughed out of any major university for it, but it'd be fun to know. Sean, welcome back, Sean. So good to see you. Shh, no. Sorry. King Yeti says France just announced the end of abundance. I'm not sure what that means. France has been living in a scarcity-free world all this time, or is that like one of their treatises on men that I didn't know about? Anyways, no. Sherry says, I'm looking for sugar-free edibles or caps in Temecula. Do you know of any brands that are best? Looking for heavy potency. Thank you. Buddies makes excellent high capsule or high potency capsules. Buddies, and they are very affordable. Papa and Barkley also makes great ones. They're a little bit pricier. I just wouldn't spend more than the bare minimum. So on capsules. But I don't know of any sugar-free edibles on the market right now, in specifically, Sherry. Sorry about that. Yeti says, Huxley liked to conjure demons and aliens naked in the desert with other men. Great guy. Yeah, Huxley. What a fascinating personal character in addition to interesting literary history he leaves us behind. Huxley, just like, if you read your mid-century U.S. history, he's a dude who just pops up all the fucking time. Like, Huxley's at everybody's parties. He's opining about this. He's complaining about these things. He's bitching about this dude. But he just always seems to be around interesting people when he was alive. And then he did a lot of drugs, I think, which was kind of ironic with, Brave New World. Carpe says, that reminds me, my childhood was the Nintendo GameCube, and I fully regret selling all of the games. He had some very sentimental memories, and I understand what you're saying. Yes. Well, and also, that particular era of stuff is particularly valuable in the secondary market. A lot of GameCube nostalgia for one of Nintendo's least popular systems. Loved mine too. Got it for Christmas the year it came out. Had my Super Smash Brothers Melee. I find it so fascinating, and I just, it's a thing that I can't ever know it, and would love to just have that experience. What is it like to be a kid who is turning, 5 or 6 years old now and playing Mario for the first time, when there is literally like 30 years of Mario's history before it, a dozen mainline games or whatever? Does that, do they feel like similar to how I would have felt about Star Wars as a kid, like this semi-mythical thing, but Mario's never not continually existed, unlike Star Wars when I was young? It would be so strange, not basically my life is contemporary of video games writ large. I mean, you know, the Atari existed before me, but as a mass cultural phenomenon, especially all of our beloved mascots and characters and icons that come from video games all come from that era. Like, it's all grown up right alongside of me, and I've never had like to think about it as something that existed prior to me and as a history. And do like if you play your first Pokemon game at the age of 8, how many do you go back before, and are you like, oh my god, I want to play all the old ones? Does that happen? Or are you like, this is mine, this is where I start on the ladder, everything that happened before is kind of like prehistory, and now I am in on this generation going forward? Like, how does nostalgia work on something that a franchise that has never stopped existing throughout your life? Like, when the kid who is playing Mario Odyssey now turns 30, is he only going to be nostalgic for Mario Odyssey, or is he going to be nostalgic for just like Mario writ large? I don't know. I'm kind of yammering, but I always find it fascinating. And it's not just, Nintendo games, it's the internet writ large. It's impossible to get in the mindset of somebody, to me, who has always existed, at least when the internet existed, as a thing in people's lives. I can't imagine how it would change your brain in such fundamental ways. I assume they just they think differently than I do. People who are born in let's even push it up, a smartphone world, a world where the smartphone existed. Your brain would be so different than mine, I would imagine. Yeah, I'm so fascinated by that kind of stuff. Anyways, just rambling. Thank you for your comment about Huxley and his conjuring of demons in the desert. Fun guy. Brave New World, Are we going to destroy ourselves Brave New World style or 1984 style, which is the big debate? Are we going to be killed by the things that we hate, or are we going to be killed by the things that we love? Right now, it's an interesting tension, man. It could go 50-50. I would have said Huxley for a long time, but in that last 3 or 4 years, the Orwellian vision of doom and gloom is picking up steam again. It's kind of like we've somehow managed to take George Orwell's worst nightmare of the future and Aldous Huxley's worst nightmare of the future. Instead of picking one, we're like, both. Lovely. Okay. King Yeti says, GameCube had super smooth play. The controller was amazing. It's the controller that should have come with the 64. Yes, the 64 controller is garbage. Although, I'm going to say something mildly controversial. I don't quite understand the love for the GameCube controller outside of Smash Brothers. Now, if you're a Smash Brothers player, it makes total sense to me. The layout makes perfect. It's like it was designed for it. But for modern 3D games where you are navigating a 3D space, why that camera stick is a thing and not another analog stick, I don't get it. It's not great. I wish that didn't make Nintendo shy off away from awkward layouts or different layouts. It's we've gotten it. The big difference now is, do you want these buttons to be, or these sticks to be parallel or off? center or askew from each other, and that's about the differentiation you get. But yeah, I wish somebody would say, well, let's change it up. Let's make it all different. I do love the proliferation of back paddles. I am terrible at remembering to use them. Speaking of brain patterns locked in place, I think kids are. It's gonna be super lucky to grow up in worlds with back paddles having 8 more. That's just 4. Even just 2 more inputs on the back. It's gonna be a big thing, I think. It's gonna be a slow change, the concept of back paddles changing game design, but I think it will. Like, and as people get used to it and start to proselytize the values of being able to keep both your thumbs on the sticks and press buttons, I think back paddles are just going to become bigger and bigger deals till they're just ubiquitous. But it does take a bit of a learning curve. Carpe says, that's another thing I just thought about. Our childhood had real game characters and all this, but these kids nowadays just play Fortnite and use characters. Do they build the same connection as us? All very fascinating. Fortnite is just the most interesting, fascinating experiment. It's hard to say what all, like, I don't need to get into my multiverse theory of that we live in a glut of multiversal fiction. It's become such a trope. Very quickly went from a novel thing to every story in the world has to have a multiverse. I think to be a armchair psychologist, I think it just stems from the fact that, say, in the last 6, 7, 8 years, the future is not at all like we were taught or expected it to be. There were a lot of us end of historyers, and that sort of like, this isn't what we were told was going to be our future, has jostled things in people's mind. And the idea that, like, it's so compelling to people that there is a universe out there, there is a place out there where all of the things didn't just go wrong. And that is like compelling people to want multiversal fiction. But Carpe asks, do kids build the same connection to characters as us? I'm not sure. I have no idea. In some ways, I hope not. It's not good. Like, building a connection to any of the brands that are represented, any of the hundreds of popular brands represented in Fortnite, is not a good thing. I'll just categorically say it. Like, it's great that you can love it and play it, but like, building a connection to it is what the marketers would love you to say it and describe your relationship as. It's just like a way to get exploited by the wealthiest in society by trying to attach you in your childhood to these characters or icons, or IPs, franchises, whatever business words we want to use, so that they can, for your life, extract some money out of you every now and then when they want to, when you want a nostalgic fix or something comforting, and they spend a lot of money and effort getting people in love with these characters, not because there's any merit to them, but because it makes them a lot of money. And IP is the most valuable stuff around that isn't rare materials, rare minerals, and expect more of this kind of stuff, like the ruthless exploitation of intellectual property, the clamoring to get your intellectual property on that, Fortnite level integration pedestal, so that it just becomes this perpetual machine. It's all pretty cynical, but I love Mario. He's great, and I love the Hulk. He's great too. I look at all my plastic tchotchkes. My monuments to hypocrisy. Carpe says, excuse me, OJ. A few years ago, I had a family friend whose kid had all the game systems, but he was obsessed with Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Games that are a challenge hold up if if it fits a kid's competitive mold, he thinks. OJ Simp, yes, very true. Just look at the number of speed runs, like these, people who beat old video games in incredibly fast times. It's a bunch of like 19-year-olds beating a bunch of games that, came out 5 or 6 years before they were born. And that's great. That's fascinating. So there is some of that, but I just wonder, outside of that, like, very niche thing, how much, like, do people go back to old video games the way, do kids, let's say, does a kid go back to Super Mario Galaxy from the Wii the same way that same kid might go back and watch Iron Man because he loves the Marvel movies? I honestly don't know. I do know that they do go back and watch they watch whatever it is that they're interested in now, because those things are always the same. Nothing ever dies, The same things I was interested in as a child are the same things that kids are interested in today. It's not a good thing. There should be, it would be way better if I went through the toy aisle at a place, and instead of going, oh, I know everything that's here, I didn't recognize anything. I think that would be a way better thing. But that's not the case right now. Again, see ruthless exploitation of intellectual property, the getting kids hooked early, getting them their positive associations with beloved franchises, so they become lifelong purchasers of tchotchkes from said franchises. And then that's back to OJ's original question, when culture sort of hits a dead end. And OJ, back to your point as well about the kid playing Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Excellent point. Any game that is mechanically robust 40 years ago still holds up today. Like, even if a kid wouldn't naturally go back to Super Mario Brothers on the NES, they may very well enjoy it if it was put in front of them, because the fundamental design of it still holds up incredibly well. King Yeti says, I would like to think that kids would like to see what games their parents enjoyed, and as a kid from a franchise that they have shared memories with. That's an excellent point as well, Yeti. Yes, I think kids' parents will obviously help funnel them into their chosen, franchises and will encourage kids to go back and play the games that they tell them they had so much fun playing themselves as a kids. I think that is absolutely true. What's weird is that there won't be any, like, it'll be very few new characters and new experiences and new stories. It'll be the same ones, just somewhere else in its, IP lineage. But they're just not as many new, big, huge things because there's not as much money in it. Okay, let me finish this bag and we'll go do a second dab. And we'll get ourselves refocused here. I've been rambling for a while. Getting back to our conversation about Huxley and Orwell says that they were both right, but Huxley welcomed it. We all thought, Brave New World was a criticism, but instead it was what is the term? Utopian fiction in disguise. It wasn't dystopian, it was utopian all. Dun dun dun. Yeti said he played a lot of football and fighting games on the GameCube. Yes, it would have been a great fighting game controller as well. And also sports games, because you don't need 2 analog sticks for football, being a plane. Those would both work great. And back when you had multiple football game options. Not that I'm a football game fan, but I still lament the loss of the access to the NFL license by anybody other than EA, which happened in that era. There was a time where NFL 2K, the makers of the most popular basketball game, were about to overtake Madden in sales in the very early aughts for 2 reasons. Again, I don't play sports games. This is just a fun story from back then. And a really gross, back to our anti-competitive, yada, 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 shut this guy up. But back in the early aughts, Madden was still the juggernaut that it is. I mean, it's never not been huge since the 16-bit era. But for a while, for a few precious years, 2K looked like they might beat Madden for 2 reasons. One, it was apparently a better game for a couple of years. And then 2, crazier, more importantly, and I would love to see, prices don't matter anymore. But this was just such a bold, out there thing that 2K did, and it worked, which is they charged $20 for their sports video game back in the early aughts, whereas Madden was a $50 property. So what did EA do when it looked like, people are going to want to just buy this cheaper, better sports game? We're going to sign a massive deal with the NFL and just give them an ungodly sum of money to be the exclusive home of NFL sports games. Competition, free markets. But either Madden or NFL 2K, both would have been great on the GameCube, I'm sure. Soul Calibur was, as you're saying with fighting games. Although I had it on the Xbox as Spawn. OJ says, what Wheats is saying is that, like, microtransactions in Fortnite is like succumbing to the Matrix. No. I don't want to say that it's not bad to buy things in Fortnite. It's not bad to love the things that you love. I love the things that I love. It is not a bad thing to love things and to enjoy properties and get excited about things. But my caveat is, I'm not sure if I could do it all over again. or if I had the opportunity to influence anybody, that I would want them exposed to those same things necessarily, because it feels very cynical, especially in things like Fortnite, where it's just as naked as like, here are your favorite, you know, whatever's, blend them all together, have everything you want. It just feels like, yeah, it just I made my points. Promise to Dap. You are not bad for buying anything in Fortnite, but maybe the developers are bad for putting Goku in Fortnite. Maybe that's not a good thing, but why? I don't know. I feel like I'm being an old man now. Dab time. And as we're moving over there, Carpe says, it just nicks my heart that, for example, I was a Dragon Ball fan as a child, and now it's introduced in Fortnite when children, oh, back to Goku, see characters related. It's the character from Fortnite. Interesting. Very interesting. There is that, I didn't realize there was it went that direction. I assumed it was all, you went to Fortnite to play the characters that you loved, not that you, when you were in Fortnite, you then developed love for the characters that you saw running around. So it's bi-directional. It goes both ways, which of course makes it all the more cynical that, oh, I could just want to go play this game with my friends and, you know, after 100 hours have this sudden affection for Rick, Goku, and Neo from the Matrix. Not because I actually like or have any real relationship to these characters, but because they've just glommed themselves onto something that I enjoy, and I've seen them a bunch, and we know that positive associations in the brain over time just develop an affection for things and yada yada yada. And then you go see Dragon Ball Super in theaters. And OJ, I think a point I'm failing to make, badly to make, but I want to try to make more in time. It's not. I think the bigger tragedy with that the kid would see Goku and go, "Oh, it's that dude from Fortnite." It's that the kid recognizes Goku at all, and that Goku is a thing that is still worthy of exploiting. That there, what I kind of just wish that what kids were watching right now is unrecognizable to me. That culture moves forward. That stuff dies. Like we let it's we no longer let things die culturally, because that's leaving money on the table. And so then everything new gets crowded out over time. And so you have kids saying, you know, oh, that's that Goku, that's the dude from Fortnite, right? Instead of just being like, not seeing Goku at all and seeing you walking to Fortnite and being like, what the fuck are all of these things? Instead of being able to recognize 80% of the menagerie of avatars in front of you. I think it's just better if we have more things that we don't recognize. It's still true for music, but many other art forms, especially ones that have IP potential, mass market potential, They don't move forward very much anymore. It's very strange. There's an excellent book that makes this argument quite well. Um, I really like it a lot. It's not my normal kind of book. It's a very uh, it's more straight up political, less nominally social science. And I'm struggling and just delaying right now because I'm trying to remember the title and I'm looking it up as we speak. Oh, the name of the novel, not novel, book, is called Fantasyland. And he talks about the author named Kurt Anderson talks about this pretty frankly and expounds upon it a lot. The sort of rut we all seem to be in culturally. The why does a photograph take any picture from any decade in the since basically photos have existed, photographs existed, and then just if you took and looked at photos and not even talking about the technology, but just and you took pictures of say just people and only people and what they're wearing, what's around them, yada yada yada, so on and so forth, you would be able to almost recognize a decade by decade difference, how the people dress, how they look, there's particular styles, the facial hair, the all kinds of small and large details will change drastically from year to year to year until about the year 1990s. And then from about that point on, stuff really decelerates in terms of styles that are changed. You could actually look, take a photo from say 2012 and compare it to something from right now, and as long as it the resolution or the photo or the HDRness of it doesn't give it away, it'd be hard to tell the difference between those two decades. But if you did that from 1992 to 1982, it would be very, very apparent. And you might even be able to do a photo from 2002. There are, photos that would exist from then that you could compare to now that would be nearly indistinguishable because, there are small stylistic changes, but largely we kind of stagnated and we are not moving forward, and makes an excellent point in that book, again, called Fantasyland. That's just one of his observations about how we've slowed down culturally, is just sartorially our clothing. We all look kind of the same that we did 30 years ago. All right. Moving on. OG says, honestly, Carp, I might be so out of touch, I didn't realize the kids still don't watch Dragon Ball on Cartoon Network at 3 p.m. after school like I did. It's because they're streaming it at all hours of the day. I think they're very much still watching Dragon Ball. I just think that they don't have appointment viewing. That would sound so insane to them. The idea that you have to be somewhere to watch something at a time. Other than live streams. I guess that kind of is the closest analog, but to watch an episode of TV at a time, to get home to do something, to wake up early to catch the cartoon you like, that would seem Greek to children. Back to their brains are different than ours. And I would just love to know. I would love to inhabit a young person's brain for a moment and just see how differently they see the world than me. And I'm not saying it is a bad thing. I think it's probably great to have. You'd be so much better at the internet than I am, for sure. but I would just be so, again, fascinated to see how differently they perceive the world than me, in fundamental ways. Looks like we've got Carpe and OJ lamenting their late night Adult Swim animes. Is Adult Swim, that still exists because Rick and Morty's still around, but I know that they did cancel some great stuff at Adult Swim recently, but does that not still exist? Like, can you tune into that? Do people tune into things? I don't know. I'm like a kid already like that. I don't, the idea of tuning into something now is foreign to me. Anyways, Uninspired says, do you see the 100 milligram edible limit law ever getting lifted, improved here in California? Great question. And I think I've been very cynical today. Let's go with the cynical answer. And the answer is only if there is a strong lobbying drive for that to happen. And I currently don't really see, like, I don't hear about it if there is. It doesn't seem like there are a lot of people who are pushing for a higher limit on edibles, especially with tinctures being higher already. That might not be true. I could just be missing all of that. But if there isn't like a strong cannabis lobbying arm that's saying, we want this limit gone, we want to make our edibles as potent as we want, I don't think it'll ever change just because inertia. Like, the law's in the books, nobody's advocating really, it seems to work, why disturb it? Even if it would be great to actually reassess. Crackerjack, happy 420. Welcome. Thanks for hanging out with us. We're going to go get our fourth bag here. Dedicated for all our new friends here on the stream. OJ said he's actually wearing, excuse me, his Cowboy Bebop shirt right now, and he wouldn't have had that without the Saturday Night Adult Swim block of anime. As things never die, and as the arms of the media giants reach their ways out to other valuable intellectual properties that haven't been exploited in other mediums, and get ready to see it. Anime is currently getting hit real hard with that right now. And you have this, gold rush to make anime adaptations, live action things, or whatever here in the West. And then you get stuff like the apparently god-awful Cowboy Bebop Netflix series. And because it's just too much money left on the table, it's too valuable of a property, it's still too recognizable a name, I would think even after that total clusterfuck, I've never seen either of them, but I heard the show was a nightmare. But it's just, again, it's a valuable property. I guarantee you, somebody's gonna try to make it again, or bring Cowboy Bebop back in some fashion within the next decade, because, again, it's a valuable, recognizable brand from a lot of people's childhood, which means it's got a lot of value to be extracted from it. So we need to keep it fresh in the cultural churn, so we got to make a new thing from it. Even if the first one sucked, we'll get another one out there. Because gotta keep the wheel going. OJ says, good news for football game fans. Maximum Football 23 is coming out for the next gen, and there will be options to fully customize, download real teams. So that is, I was going to ask, I hadn't heard of this Maximum Football. I'm guessing it is an unlicensed, not doesn't have the NFL, but they are going to do like a web thing where you can, it'll be an unlicensed thing, but you can then download rosters and uniforms and outfits. Interesting strategy. I love to see how it'll work. Another thing I'm really incredibly fascinated to see, speaking of EA and sports games and cynical relationships built on nothing but a name, I'm so curious to see what's going to happen with, I forget what they're going to call it, FIFA, EA's soccer game, which is losing its name. I think that's still the case. They basically, the organization tried to extract too much blood money, and EA balked and said nope. So they relinquished the name, and now they're gonna have to change the name of one of the most recognizable video game brands in the world. Not so much here in the US, but definitely in the world. That's going to be fascinating. It's going to be interesting to see, how many people will just not rebuy it because the name isn't the same. How much EA is going to have to spend to get people to convince that this one is the one they used to love. And however much money they spend won't be enough because apparently that thing just prints money. These ultimate team things from EA sports games are casinos. But interesting. Thank you for that heads up, Maximum Football. I didn't realize that. Carpe says he agrees. His parents' wedding photo, they are both like 50 now, married for 20 years. No difference in a wedding photo between then and now. Yes, and I know some of this is just going to be like, it's hard to, distill this down into any kind of actual data, and it feels incredibly anecdotal. All of that is true. But there does seem to be something to this argument. And if you find yourself, that's not the only argument that Kurt Anderson makes in Fantasyland. It's a great book about, well, the subtitle is How America Went Haywire, a 200-year history. But it's one of the sort of arguments within it is about our stalled out culture. Reading it, he really makes a compelling case for it. And it's hard not to see it everywhere once you are clued in. And by everywhere, I mean in recent photos and the regurgitation of the same IPs and characters over and over and over and over again. Once you're clued in, and again, it's hard not to. Crackerjack, happy 420, 422 is 422. Well, that's some clever wordplay. How delightful. Thanks for joining us, Crackerjack. And he says, happy 423. What happens to y'all if y'all smoke somewhere where it's a reasonable expectation where the public can view cannabis consumption? Nobody cares, Crackerjack. Literally nobody cares in Southern California. And I am white. I'm not trying to make light of that. That could be very different if you, try being very flagrant about where you smoke and you aren't in such a privileged position. But here in Southern California, Crackerjack, if I am understanding your question correctly, how I interpret it as how much trouble should one assume that they will get in either with Johnny Law or just the public, annoying the public, if consuming weed out in the open. That's how I think I interpret your question. Not your fault, mine, reading comprehension down the toilet right now. But if that is your question, the answer is nobody cares at all. As long as you're doing it outside, nobody cares. don't smoke flower in public so much because some people really hate the smell, which we were talking about earlier, and might get annoyed with the smell. But if you're doing like a vape pen anywhere in public, other than of course indoors, nobody cares. I mean, you can do it right in front of the courthouse. You can do it, in front of a school. You can do it at places that say no cannabis use here. Nobody cares. Reason being is almost everybody is doing it, or a hell of a lot of people do it on occasion, which is wonderful. It's incredible. It's actually great. I did just see a study earlier. I didn't actually read the study, so I'm very guilty of just spreading, information from a headline from a scientific study that was probably misinterpreted by the person who wrote the story, and then further misinterpreted by the person who wrote the headline. And then I didn't even bother to read more than just that. And here I am sharing it. But it did seem like it was from at least a reputable source, which is that in states where cannabis consumption is legal, usage has gone up 20%. And I think that meant people who used not the number of users, but basically the amount of cannabis used per user of cannabis, which is pretty significant, and curious, and not saying that's a bad thing. Because I think also in those same states that cannabis is legal, for example, the number of opiates prescribed have gone down further and faster than in other states where cannabis is not legal. Crackerjack says, "Are you married?" And he says in Illinois, and I keep saying they or he. I'm sorry if I'm getting your pronouns wrong. Not making light. But in Illinois, I think it's technically illegal to gift homegrown marijuana to your wife. Really? Is that just from some poorly worded part of their cannabis laws? Is that some odd, bizarro blue law? Why would that be? Very odd. But yes, I am married. I've been married for quite a while. Crackerjack says, or my husband, or am I a homosexual? I am boring and straight, unfortunately. I'm a dumb, white, straight man. And I am married to a woman. It would have been shocking had I said I was straight so many times over and over again and said, but I am married to a man. It would have been a pretty shocking, fun thing to say, but that isn't true. I was going to say, not that there's anything wrong with that, but there probably is something wrong with that. Not that, but that. You probably shouldn't be attracted to one gender, but then marry somebody from the other gender, because that's probably a recipe for disaster. Not that two people of the same gender obviously should not be allowed to get married. Holy shit, I am baked. Crackerjack says, that should be followed with sentient human being, right? Or am I right? Don't remember what that's is in reference to. I'm sorry. Crackerjack, I get you. You're running a little bit behind. Yes, and I think you would find probably more than just tobacco and opiate usage. You would find a lot of both spurious and true correlations between cannabis legalization and X Vice going up or down. Again, many of those will be random and spurious, have no reason for those things to be correlated, but some of them will be, there will be some causality there. Crackerjack also says that back to the tobacco line, it's really a shame that tobacco, man, I really wish there were some much, much better long-term health studies on vaping nicotine and what it does to you, how bad it's going to be for you long-term. Unfortunately, the kids right now are the lab rats. The kids who started with Juuls and are now on to whatever the next big one is, Elf Bar. It seems like there's some, potential bad short-term health outcomes, but not that bad. But we just don't, they haven't been around long enough to know what's going to happen to people who use these every day, a dozen times a day, what they're going to, if it's going to affect them in some long-term way. Because again, they just haven't existed long enough. Like, we didn't really know that smoking cigarettes, I mean, this is a bad analogy because they existed longer and people were using tobacco in all kinds of other ways. And we didn't even really know what lung cancer was. But like, when cigarettes first existed, it wasn't like we knew immediately that they caused lung cancer. It took a while, like, because it takes a while for these, they are a cumulative effect. Like, smoking cigarettes has a long-term deleterious effect to your health that isn't known even, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years after rigorous consumption. And while it doesn't seem like there's any huge health bombs in the way for nicotine vapes, we just don't know until the people who started doing them start to turn 50, 60, 70 and see if they just develop some really sad and unfortunate health complications. So I was about to make all of that was just a parenthetical in the, it kind of sucks that tobacco is on the rise and teens are way into nicotine again because, there's just no good in it. It's a lot of money to give to pretty shitty corporations because the ones that are super successful are going to be owned by the big tobacco companies very quickly, if not already. And it's just feeding those companies for really, nicotine is like the most nefarious of all addictions in that it doesn't actually like really, at least if you're doing heroin, you're going to feel amazing. If you're if you're an alcoholic, you're going to be drunk a lot. Like, nicotine is like even more kind of sinister in that it doesn't even provide that great of a benefit to the person. I mean, a mild euphoria, mild, very brief euphoria is what you would describe it as. And then it just nests itself in there. And basically, very quickly, you lose, from what I understand, that mild euphoria. And all it becomes is a addiction feeding mechanism. Like, you are just consuming nicotine to stave off the actual physical cravings that your body has for it. Because it's a pretty nasty addiction. It's a physical addiction, even if it isn't going to kill you. It's just gross. It sucks. It's a really bad molecule. And it was plummeting. And now, thanks to nicely marketed, fun-looking vapes, it's going back up. So hopefully, all it's going to do is enrich some tobacco executives. And that's that's really the best outcome, and nothing more. OJ Sip says, if you could watch one movie again with completely fresh eyes, not knowing what happens next / the ending, which film would it be and why? Wow. OJ, what a fantastic question. And what a one that you could tackle in so many ways. Would you go for something with like a twist? Something like, oh my god, like or to experience The Sixth Sense again, or even The Matrix. The Matrix might be a great one for that, like to have all of that. But of course, then you get into the weight of, well, how many things are derivative of The Matrix? How fresh could it feel if you were watching it now? Let's ignore all that. But I think The Matrix could be a great contender in that, like, surprise twist, kind of like, oh my god, you can only have your mind blown in this specific way once. I'm not sure if that's the way I would go, but that there's a great argument for that. Do you go for like the experience, like the this was such a monumental movie to me at this time, like Episode 4 or Titanic, or some movie out of some period of time in your life where that meant something huge to you, or means something huge for everybody. Do you choose it that way, or do you just choose like one of your favorite movies that knocked your socks off and you wish you could see it again for the first time with totally fresh eyes, and as if you had never seen it before? Which is the way I was originally going to go, but I don't think I'm going to do that, because my favorite movies, I've watched them several times and find a lot to enjoy in rewatching them. Find them actually a very satisfying thing to do and enriching thing to do, to rewatch great movies over again, especially like my favorites. So I'm not sure I would do that, because then I lose all of that. Okay, I got it. OJ, excellent question. You're going to get yourself the first and last dab of the show as we close out, because you had such a great question. OJ, his suggestions would be Fight Club or Unbreakable. Both great. Fight Club would be real interesting. I am going to go with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I think that is a movie that stands. I managed to only see it like 3 times somehow. Nothing else is derivative of it. It's so singular that it hasn't been copied, and so, you wouldn't have seen it in other places. It's a movie that kind of does have a twist in a way, and it's beautiful. It's a movie that, I mean, while it is better, it's great on repeat viewings. The first time you see it, it dazzles you, man. It just 100% dazzles you. And that's what I'm gonna go with. Just without a lot of extra thought, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. If I could pick one movie to see over again. Not my favorite movie. Not even my favorite movie written by Charlie Kaufman, the writer of Eternal Sunshine. Not even my favorite one of his movies, but I think the one I would choose to watch for the first time again. OJ says that the movie does need to have a twist element for him, which I totally get that. Saw 1, man. I remember seeing that in theaters with my bunch of high school buddies, and all of us being really blown away by the dude standing up. um, and the beginning of the torture porn genre. Uh, Hitman says, fun recommendation. I take a blunt's worth of weed, decarb it, put it in his coffee, and he's good for the night. Um, let's see. Weird. I'm not Crackerjack. One, your name is now beginning to make me suspicious, and two, it's just a lot of questions, man, about people's genders and their race and what they should and shouldn't be proud of. It has me a little disconcerted. I'm not sure, Crackerjack. Uh oh, OJ. Do not think of Eternal Sunshine as a Jim Carrey movie. It is not. This isn't The Mask. This isn't Liar Liar. This isn't Dumber Dumber. Um, this is a very very different kind of movie. Uh, I totally suggest it. If you've never heard of it, man, you are in for a treat. And it's so incredible. By the way, OJ, if you don't know anything about it, OJ, my last recommendation to you is please, 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 please do not read any reviews, watch a trailer. Don't do any of it. Just go in as blind as can be and let it wash over you, man. Uh, I can practically guarantee it's going to be a moving experience for you. Carpe, I did it, by the way. I appreciate the suggestion. And Crackerjack says, I was referring to say bisexual. You shouldn't say someone's a bisexual. Instead, say they are a bisexual sentient human being. Did I say somebody shouldn't call themselves a bisexual? You should absolutely call yourself a bisexual. If you are, please. I didn't mean to assert that at all. My bad if that came across. I do not believe that at all. Welcome, Carl. Thanks for hanging out with us. We're gonna go do one last dab. We had a great question from OJ. We're gonna dedicate it to, and we'll give this last dab out to you as well, Carl. So before I do this last dab, any cool last questions to rant about? Oh my god. Would somebody ban? Do we have Carpe? Did I turn you into a mod? If so, can you ban Mr. Crackerjack? I don't know why I can't do it. Remove. Oh, there we go. Oh, that's just the message. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, man. Unpleasant people. This, I don't understand why the trolls always come to the same, like, well, I guess the question answers itself. I was going to say, why do they always hit the same politically charged topics? I I appreciate a troll, and I appreciate somebody trying, but it's just like Could we get one or two other topics other than you know, awful old canards of race and gender? But I guess they're classics for a reason. Anyways, thanks for the great question, OJ. Awesome, OJ. Well, I'm very glad to hear that. Uh, Also glad to see that you're getting to take a vacation. And when you do, I hope you enjoy that Heineken, that weed. And I am really, really optimistic that you're going to like this movie, man. And happy to see you're not going to spoil it. Um, Carpe says, man, I really hope soon there's some weed expos or like weed conventions. That would be really fun. I hope so too. I think they do happen all the time. A lot of them are private, not open to the public for a lot of reasons. But I would love for a huge public weed expo to exist somewhere. It'd be a great chance to hang out with some folks, get high with some people after a long, long time. It would be the perfect excuse. So if anybody's keeping an eye on those things and sees an excellent convention opportunity, something in that realm, please share it with me. You can email it or Twitter it, tweet it, whatever that verb is, and we could make this happen finally. We should. And with that, guys, that will do it for this live stream. It has been a blast hanging out with everybody. Thank you so much for your great questions. Thanks for all your wonderful comments. And I probably won't be back until next Monday when our next review premieres. Won't be